Let's make sure it's working. Working. Yes, the mic is on today. Yay. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Dice, our Dungeons & Dragons interactive conversation. Kind of chat about D&D or role-playing games. Or DMing, looking for suggestions or help with ideas, world building. A lot of different things we chat about today. Hello, KingRazor007. Welcome. I see you used a lot of your Minecraft tutorials to help me through Minecraft. Excellent. Oh, thank you very much, sweetie. Awesome. Thank you very much. So I'm happy to hear that. Glad I could help. My wife was just dropping off yet another little package in the mail. I'm slightly addicted to the website wish.com, where I buy little tiny cheap things from China. Very cheap, and then they send them here, but it takes like a month or two to get here. And I've got a bunch of things that have come in over the past couple weeks. I'm saving them up, so I'm gonna do a little Wish unboxing on stream just to see what all's in there and what we got. So excited by that. Something we'll be doing here. I'll probably stream it on Twitch, put it up on YouTube as a short edited video. People on YouTube wanted to see this video, and people on Twitch wanted it live. So try to make everybody happy. So today's episode may be a little shorter than normal. I don't have a whole lot of material to cover today. And also in line with that, this may be, at least temporarily, the last episode of Behind the Dice that we're going to do for. This is episode 16, and I've covered a lot of the different topics that I wanted to with this series, and had a lot of opportunity to have great conversations, answer questions and such. But I've gone through most of the material that I wanted to cover. I find myself now in some episodes we're just kind of going back and forth, rehashing the same things. I also just realized the viewer count's wrong. One moment. What? What is that? I can't do anything right. Bear with me a moment. Switch it to YouTube. I forgot to switch it to YouTube. There we go. So we're gonna chat a little bit tonight. So gonna be maybe a little bit shorter than normal. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to replace Behind the Dice with. I've got a couple ideas I'm bouncing around. I want to see how well I can hash them out. I'd like to still keep it a D&D space, something specific. If you've been on the channel long, you'll know that every other Thursday I do Mergedworlds, which is a Dungeons & Dragons story podcast. I'm telling the campaign I've been writing and running for over 30 years. Also, because of that, at least at the current space, next Thursday would be Mergedworlds episode. But I have to have some dental surgery done that day, so I won't be able to do so. So I'm going to, next Thursday I will not be on at all, unless they can get me in sooner. Quite a bit of pain. I've been for about a month now, and just haven't had a lot of opportunity. But if they can get in earlier, I will. If not, the next Thursday I will not be here. So even though next week would normally be Mergedworlds, I'm just going to bump that a week. We'll do it the week after. So you won't have to wait a whole nother 2 weeks on top of that to get back to Merge. As for Dungeons & Dragons style material, if you have some ideas or suggestions about maybe something along that line, let me know or throw it down in the comments. Today we're going to kind of talk about plot hooks and backstories. Hello, Terry. G'day, Terry. I was just mentioning that this may be our last Behind the Dice for a little while. I'm running out of things to talk about. I also need to get a beard trim, haircut so bad. All this shaved up under here. Looks so fugly. I'm sorry that I am unpresentable to you folks. But yeah, covered majority of the content I wanted to cover in Behind the Dice in the last 15 episodes. So today will be a little more just kind of general chat. And next week there will not be a stream on Thursday because of the dental surgery. The week after that will be Mergedworlds. So in place of Behind the Dice, I've got a couple ideas of what I'd like to put in there. I'd still like to keep it D&D role-playing themed. So I'll be working on that. Got a thumbs up from the wife, which lets me know that everything's up. Yeah, so talking about D&D today, one of the last kind of things I wanted to cover is that plot hooks and character development. Touched on this past, but I didn't really get a chance to dedicate some chat to this. While this may be a little shorter episode than normal, it does have something I wanted to cover. As a writer myself, especially in a world of D&D, which is different than writing just a story or a book, because you're writing something for other people to interact with. Dungeons & Dragons story, you're creating an outline, maybe a storyline, but how the characters and other people react and make their characters react can definitely have an effect on your story. Whereas a book, somebody's just going to sit there and read it. Same with the movie or anything else. Even in a video game, very often there's so much scripted stuff that the combat and the leveling and such in between is a little bit more free open. But if it's a game with a storyline, you're still stuck on a specific path. Although it is cool when they give several different endings and options to roll. But D&D is very different than that. You may have an idea of where you want things to go, but your characters could just go a completely different direction. So I find as a dungeon master, the easiest way to develop a plot or story is to tie it in with their character development. I'll tell you what I mean by that. If I know that a character has a long-term goal or an end goal, right? And I'm going to use Mergedworlds as an example. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, Mergedworlds, it is a D&D podcast story I've been doing for about 3 years now. Also available on iTunes and Spotify for free if you'd like to listen to it audio. But Mergedworlds, some of the main characters, we're going to start with Darsh. Right? Darsh is an easy one. Early on, the young lady who played Darsh let me know that Darsh the Minotaur wanted to be a merchant. Wanted to have his own ships and fleet and so on and so forth. That's what he wanted to do with his life. He came from a family of merchants, wanted to rebuild that family business and such. Have something to pass on to his kids. That was great. Having that and knowing that's where the character wants to go, that's their life goals, makes it very easy to write a story that progresses that. So in Mergedworlds, situation, a storyline that led them to get a boat. Got his first ship. It was a small one. Named it the Miss Dandelion, for another character. And they went on a little adventure to some islands out in the middle of the ocean. Those islands, of course, became very important and even eventually became his lands, his islands, that he developed his, I guess you could almost say kingdom. He's not really a king. It's definitely his. He has the wealth of a king, if not more. But that was a great way for me. Like, okay, cool. I want to progress this story. I want to bring in a pirate lich. I have an idea for a cool pirate lich fight and a cool storyline that accompanies that. And by tying that to some islands that once the evil is destroyed, these are free, open, bountiful islands that no nation claims. I get to plant that seed for Darsh, saying, hey, they're pretty nice islands. They're almost in sight of each other. Very easily be developed, even though one of them has a mystery, and if you go on that island, you'll get killed. That's a long-term little thingamabob right there for them to have to deal with. But it gave him goals. Okay, now I need to make money. I want to develop these islands. First of all, I got to make sure no other nation is going to fight me over them. They didn't. It enabled me to keep my story parallel with where the characters wanted to go. It makes it easier to keep a character on plot if the plot is featuring what they want to do. That makes sense. I try not to railroad my players, which means put them in a spot where they have no choices at all. There will be times you have to. There'll be parts of your story where something has to happen in order for the story to progress. Keep those to a minimal as possible, but make them epic. When it happens, make it a big deal. Something that, oh, wow, this is a world-altering thing. Okay. Wow, now we have to deal with this. It's okay, do it once in a while, but give people choices. Strawberry lemonade. No, Wendy's is not a sponsor, but I am available, Wendy's, just letting you know. So connecting the storyline and the plot line to characters' development really, really helps because it motivates the players to stay on goal or on task. And that just works out well for everybody. You get to tell the story you want to tell, but they get to live the story they want to live. Mergedworlds is full of that. Very early in the character's creation, learned that they became very connected to their characters quickly. Not everybody does that. Some people have characters and maybe I don't like them as much. Or they're like, all right, but I have another character I like more. Hello, Miss Ashley. So I was very lucky that my players became very connected to their characters very quickly. Which meant that I could really, like I said, go in deep goals, future goals. I got to enter into things like relationship, marriages, children, family connection. Now, if you've watched or listened to any Mergedworlds, you'll know that prophecy is a big part of the Mergedworlds storyline. Prophecy is a double-edged sword if you're using that in your D&D or your story. Dang it. Cat hair. Playing with the kitties before I started streaming. Prophecy could be a double-edged sword. I will explain. No spoilers. We still haven't watched last week's. Don't judge me. I couldn't hear you. I was too busy judging you. No, you're fine. I'm not going to say anything about last week. But no, I'm just talking in general. Talking in general today. So with prophecy, I get to dictate a path, right? I get to say, this is going to happen. It's going to come to happen eventually, probably. Probably, what does that mean? It's prophecy, right? Yeah, but prophecies aren't always clear. And if you can make your prophecies vague, that's great. Because not only does it leave room for your characters to interpret what it means in different ways, it's possible the interpretation they come up with is better than what you originally planned. At which point you can change it. And they'll never know. You just got to say, oh, wow, you guys guessed it. Great job. I'm not saying I've ever done that or anything, but it is something to consider. Plus, by keeping it slightly more vague, it's hard to know when it's coming or how it's coming. But I like to imply that prophecies will always come to pass one way or another. And in Mergedworlds, that has always been true. Sometimes that people thought prophecies have already been fulfilled and they have not, or vice versa. A prophecy has been fulfilled and no one realized it yet. When they do, it'll have a major effect on character stories. So, feel free to use things like prophecy by all means, but have an open mind how you want to develop that. And let the characters have an effect on that. Because maybe the actions they take trying to stop a prophecy are the exact actions that cause it to come true. And then they're like, oh God, how did you know we'd do that? I didn't. I wrote around it. Be fluid with your story. Don't be rigid to it where they have to maintain to this one thing. It becomes less fun when they have less choice. I know I'm rehashing over a lot of stuff I've talked about before. And then just to touch in, because some more folks have popped in, this will be a little bit shorter than normal video. And this is very likely going to be the last episode of Behind the Dice, at least for the time being, because I've covered majority of the material I want to cover with this series. Running out of kind of things to put a whole episode on. Not to say it won't come back time and again as new things pop up, but I'd like to replace Behind the Dice with a different type of D&D content. I'd still like to have every other Thursday be a D&D thing. I've got a couple ideas I'm bouncing around, but I'm not sure which way I want to go yet, so I'm not going to. And then next week's episode of Mergedworlds, at least currently, is canceled because I have to have dental surgery next week. Unless they can get me in earlier, change a different stream. Which means the week after that, which would have been a Behind the Dice, is now going to be Mergedworlds. So I'm just going to bump Merged Worlds 1 week. Should work just fine. Gives me a little bit more time to get some material down. Now, not spoiling anything from last week's episode, but I can say that last week's episode was all about artists' side of an event, artists and friends. And I talked about that a little at the beginning just by saying, hey, I want to clarify that just because I keep calling artists this group does not mean artist is the only important character. It's just easy to classify them as she's the default leader of that group, whether she likes it or not. And then this next episode will be most, if not all, that group. Because when I do go back, Seraph's side will be with Seraph for a little while. There is some things coming up in that side story that I don't want to break up. It's a big chunk of story that I want to keep together just because I think it flows real well. So once we do switch to Seraph, it'll be probably 2 or 3 episodes minimum before we see artists in the group again. So artists first. So let's see, what else have I got? So again, back to plot and story. Tying NPCs to your characters, and I don't mean with ropes. Don't get freaky, that's up to you. But tying NPCs to your characters, is something I enjoy doing, but much like prophecy is double-edged sword. Cool, I'm putting characters in. It's people to be invested in. Or it's a romantic partner, or it's a fellow hireling. Good example would be Mercy and Ulrich, right? The young knight who wants to serve her as a knight, right? So she's got a warrior, or they get a first mate on a ship, whatever the case may be. You tie an NPC, you make that person important in your lives. That's great for story. What a lot of times is hard to judge is how those characters are going to affect gameplay. They're great for story. Love it. More NPCs, the better. More names I can throw in a hat, the more people they have to be afraid I'm going to kill. And I want that. And I don't do it often. It's rare that someone of importance dies in Merged Worlds. I'm not out there being a Game of Thrones kind of kill everybody every episode thing. It's not my jam. But I do it occasionally enough that they never know when it's coming. I think that's better. Again, it's a personal point of view. I think it's better. It gives you time to be invested in those people. I want to give them, I find a magic ring of something or other, and I could use it, but if I give it to this NPC, they might live longer. I really want this NPC to live longer. I'm going to give them this magical shield to help them save, or whatever the case may be. Gives you a place to put those extra magic items sometimes you find that you really don't need, or you just can't use. So I like to give those NPCs, I like to bring them into the story. I like to put in as many as I can. It just makes for a richer, fuller story. But here's where it screws you. Because now, when you're walking into a battle, right? Let's just say you're going to fight it, walk in, you're going to fight a dragon. Right? Dungeons and Dragons. Most classic fight you can do is a dragon. Walk in to fight a dragon. Your 4 heroes are strong enough, for your 5 characters, they're strong enough to take the dragon. But it's going to be a challenging fight, right? Hello, Tyler. Got your 5 characters like, yes, we think we can beat this dragon. And we have with us 4 NPCs. That is going to make you DM differently. It's going to force you to potentially do different what you originally planned. I'll give you an example. If those NPCs are only half the levels of your PCs, which is usually the case, they're going to be of a lower level. Rarely does someone serve you and they're more powerful, though it's possible. They may not be tough enough to survive that fight. This might not. And if that's the case, and you don't want them to die, it's important that they stay alive. You don't have to dumb down your battle. You've got to make it weaker. You've got to make it in such a way that it's not going to be able to inflict as much damage, kill the NPCs, which might take some of the danger or risk, make it not as exciting for the actual characters themselves. Or the flip side of that, those NPCs are good enough that it throws off the battle, making it too easy. The NPCs end up pulling off a heavy load of the work. You don't want that either. Same situation. Here's a dragon. Died in 3 rounds because 3 of my NPCs rolled 20s and did a crit and shot a face off, or whatever the case is. That can throw off your story as well. So it's something I struggled with early on when I started bringing what I intended to be long-term NPCs into my adventures. And it was a struggle. Probably one of the harder things I've had to deal with is keeping the story working. And so I found that when people started having multiple NPCs serve them, I had to find a way to keep them out of the main adventure. It was important that they still were there for the story side of it and the support side of it, but they can't always be in the thick of the fight. And that's how Serenity came. Serenity came to exist because there were just too many damn NPCs that it was making it hard to make challenging fights. So I said, okay, I'm going to give them a place. I'm going to step towards what their dreams were, having their own place to live. And it's going to be a place where these NPCs themselves will also get to live. And protecting that home, or keeping that home working, if it's a business type situation, Darcy's Island, gave a reason for those NPCs to not be with them. And I'm going on an adventure, you have to stay here and protect our people. I have to go on an adventure, you have to stay here and keep the merchant ships going and the business running so we don't lose everything we've invested. Which worked really well because then I actually had an excuse to give them more NPCs. Now they have to defend the home now. I've given them now that they have Serenity, now Oromon steps in the picture. And Oromon was, at first, Oromon ended up becoming much more than I originally planned for it to be. Oromon was a sleeper agent that I did not expect was going to be what it was. I actually had a slightly different path on what Seraph's future was going to be. Same basic idea, but in a different way. But then Oromon became involved, which gave me the whole option for Dina and a lot of other stuff that's happened. But Oromon became a threat. It means in order to fight a threat of that nature, Serenity had to get bigger to have any hope or chance at all. That's when the battle mages came in, which opened up a whole other door of NPCs for me. At this point, I had characters creating their own branches of their own military. Never crossed my mind we'd come to that. Yes, I want infantry, you know what I mean? I want cavalry, I need mages, I need archers, I need ranged whatever. And these became investments, and there have been times we've spent a whole day just working on the mechanics, the stats, and the technical business of running a city or a temple or an island, ships or stuff. Usually that was something that we would do if somebody couldn't make it to the D&D. And I was very lucky. My girls were there 99% of the time. I only played in the majority of Mergedworlds. There's 2 young women. One played Darsh and Artemis. The other one plays Mercy and Dandy. And they were both very devoted to the game, and rare that someone would miss. But, you know, it's still going to happen from time to time. Obligations, family, work. And so a lot of times what myself and whoever could show up would do is work on the behind the scenes. And that can be a lot of fun if you have people that are into that. Like, okay, let's sit down and draw out what you want your temple to look like. Artemis gave me or the young lady who plays Artemis, gave me all the ideas of what she wanted in a temple. She wasn't real picky on what the layout of it was. But she knew she wanted a great library. She knew she wanted an area to make magic items and such. She wanted to have a place for an orphanage in there. And of course, she gave me very detailed idea of what she wanted the actual chapel to look like. And so we would sit down and I would draw out rough sketches of a lot of that stuff. And so we came up with what they wanted. And then we started talking about money. Right? Okay, this is how much your temple costs to upkeep for a month. The more people you add, which, over time they did, like Ormon's a danger. I need a bunch of Templars. We need people who can learn to protect the temple. Okay, here's how much that costs. And there were times where adventuring was the occupation that paid for everything else. They didn't go out looking for dragons to kill, things of that nature. It was up to me to work that into the story, naturally, so it flowed, or explain why that. But there were very times that's why I opened up treasure, and they got a lot of treasure earlier than I would normally give out to a group, because I knew they were turning around and spending 90% of it on upkeep. It wasn't that they had all this wealth they were sitting on to try to buy magic items or whatever the case, or just blow it on trash. Like, listen, I got a temple to pay for. I need money. And so then we started talking about taxing, right? And it's like, okay, how much does the temple get in donations on a monthly period? How much taxes does Mercy bring into Serenity to help pay for these costs? That's when Darsh went from not just being a merchant, but it's like, okay, so the young lady who played Darsh came to me. They're like, okay, I had an idea this week. How I can help Darsh make some more money. I'm like, okay, what do you got? And she was like, well, Darsh has merchant ships. He goes and he runs materials. And by this point, he already had Coromon, the Dwarven Kingdom, and he was making a good chunk of money off of that, as he was the only person who had access to Coromon at that point. He was making a lot of money on that. And it was around that time she came to me. She goes, well, what if on my island I made like a big marketplace where other people could come and buy goods and large goods, not just in like small stalls, but where other merchants could come and make big deals, and I can charge for a portion of that, as well as one of the islands start building like huge warehouses where people can bring their stuff to a neutral place where they know it can be protected, where someone else could then come and pick it up, so that people didn't have to go as far from country to country. I was like, that's a great idea. I think that's awesome. Darsh has all this extra space he hasn't developed yet. We could start putting the equivalent of well-protected warehouses, and while that increased the amount of security he had to hire to protect those, the profits drastically outweighed that. And we sat down and we played numbers. We just sat there that day and we figured, okay, well, this is how much it's going to cost you to do this. And then after this many months, you'd have enough money to build another warehouse. So we started planning it as long-term goals. So, okay, at the end of 4 years, I'll have 5 warehouses that will triple the amount of money I'm making right now. And it was during those conversations that we came up with the Darshtopian Games, where Darsh has basically his Olympics every 6 years. Which was another great way of bringing businessmen in and letting everyone know that Darshtopia, his lands, his islands, were a neutral ground where all were welcome. And that was, it doesn't matter if you guys are dealing with problems, you're fighting with each other, there's wars. Here you're neutral. You don't cause shit on my island. Played that very strict. And who you are, you cause problems here. I'm going to start helping the people you don't like. And you don't want that to happen because I have access to all of this. It became a very easy neutral ground where people could work on problems. And that let me build story into that. Characters and the Sea Elves adventure came out of that. Everybody was there, the different countries, and so now the Sea Elves are attacking, and now all the countries are basically in danger of this, at least anyone that lives anywhere near the southern seas. So just dedicating time to sit one-on-one with characters as they've leveled, and you start giving them a place to start sinking their money. I found that changed the game for us in several ways, and all for the better. And one of the biggest things is what we just talked about. It gave them a way to deal with income, but it also gave them a place to spend their money. It became situations where like, okay, well, here's a +3 sword. I don't really need that +3. Or there's a chest of rubies. I could use the chest of rubies. How much is that worth? 100,000 gold? Hell yeah, I'll take that over that, man. I got a sword that's just as good as that one. But that will let me build another warehouse sooner. Or that will let me hire a bunch more Templars for my temple. Or build an orphanage, or whatever the case may be. So it made them look at treasure differently, and how what payments they were looking for. Someone was hiring them to do something, or they had a choice. They walk into a dragon's hoard, you can only walk out with so much. Instead of looking for just the magic stuff, now they're looking for the valuable stuff. What's the most expensive things I can find that are the smallest, right? Because I've only got so much space in my backpack, or even with a chest of holding, which of course made that way easier, and you just bucket coins into the chest of holding. It's like, all right, I'm looking for jewelry, I'm looking for gems. That's not to say they're not going to look for magic stuff. If there's beneficial magic stuff, of course they're going to take it. It's always the fun stuff, it's the magic stuff. But, it's like, well, I could take this plate mail +1 that will only fit no one I know. It takes up a lot of space. Or I could take these 3 chests full of diamond and gold jewelries, worth way more than that plate mail to me right now, that I can sell and use that money. So that was one of the big effects it had on the game. It really changed how the characters viewed. The second thing that came of that was, again, along the same lines but different. It also changed what type of treasure and trophies they took home with them, because now they had a place to decorate. Right? There are some interesting magical items indeed, but they're big, or they're heavy, or they're awkward. There are magical chairs and thrones and stuff. You're not going to carry that with you on an adventure. But if you find a magical tapestry, or you find a tapestry worth 1,000 gold, well, maybe I'll take that home and hang it up in this building. Having a layout of that building, allowing you to decorate it with some of the things you find. Darsh started bringing home, big teeth and horns from the things he's defeated, and decorate the house with all the things he's killed. Not really heads as much, but dragon tooth sticking out of the wall. Like, what is that? Oh, it's a green dragon I killed once. It was fine. That was impressive, right? Let's see here. Onlydraven, Hanzo, good day, sir. I'm curious, how much have you made for your charity so far? So what Hanzo's referencing to is that this month we are trying to raise donations for an animal charity called FORAS, Friends of Oak Ridge Animal Shelter, that works in my area and supports multiple of the local animal shelters and such. And this month I've done a couple 12-hour streams already, and right now we are at $535 raised currently. Try and pull it up here. I think I have it listed. 540, I'm sorry. All right, $540 raised so far. I forgot to put that up on there. But yeah, it's been going really well. People have been greatly helping. We have some silly donation community goals. When we hit 250, the community now gets to pick something gross that I have to eat on stream. And now that we've hit 500, they're going to pick a food challenge, like eat a certain amount of something in a certain amount of time. We're going to figure that out as a community, and they're going to get the vote on it. If we hit 750, I'm going to do the Death Nut Challenge, which is a very, very hot and spicy thing. It's way worse than the 1 chip challenge I did last time, and that about killed me. So, Death Nut Challenge could be rough sauce for your friend and hero Draven. Yes, we're doing well. Thank you, Hanzo, and I appreciate everyone who's been participating. That's meant very much to me, and the people who in the charity, they've been keeping up with it as well. They didn't quite know that I was going to do this until it just popped up on YouTube, and I tagged them in it. So it was a very pleasant surprise for them. Thank you all. I swear I'm going to start buying more than one of these when I go to Wendy's. Their strawberry lemonade is just amazing. Again, Wendy's, not a sponsor, but I'm open. Jim hated the Death Nuts. Yes, he's mentioned it. I also am sure I'm going to hate the Death Nuts. Very, very much so. I'm not looking forward to it in any way, but for good causes, and I'll do it. And right now, the front-running thing that people have talked about for the gross challenge almost falls into food challenge, but slightly different, is for me to eat an entire container of Vegemite in 8-hour stream. Although I said if I'm going to do that, I get to use like bread and crackers and stuff to put it on. I'm just not going to see it and eat it out of the jar with a spoon. And everybody was like, oh yeah, we understand that. That's fine. Vegemite is the worst thing I've ever tasted. It's horrendous. It's gross. So we're already at 500. So yeah, we are. What are we at? We are $210 away from the spicy death nut challenge, and we still got a couple weeks left. And while I don't have any more 12-hour streams, I'm going to be mentioning it on every stream at one point or another. The link to donate on the Facebook fundraiser page is pinned at the top of chat, or you can donate to my regular donation link down in the description. Either way, 100% of your donation goes completely to the charity. I don't get any of it, and it goes directly towards the animals, vets, getting them the medical care that they need, food, blankets, toys, giving them a happy place to stay, help with fostering. But nothing goes to wages or rent, utilities. It goes directly to the direct care of the animals. So yeah, Ashley likes the idea of the Vegemite. That's we're gonna put it up there. See if people like that idea, but that seems to be the front runner. I was too vocal about how much I hated Vegemite. I've buried myself, but now people have remembered that. Some of you will get a kick out of this. Ashley, you might like it. So my community has been bullying me the last few days, picking on me. It's been very inappropriate and violent. But it seems that on very rare occasions, I might sometimes say the same catchphrases over and over again. And so they've put together an ODG bingo card that is on my Discord in the general thing right now, with common things that I say or do on streams. They're playing ODG bingo streaming, and I've done my very best not to look at the card. That way, if they are playing it, I'm not actively trying to do or not do specific things. Although occasionally I catch myself about to do something I know would be on there. My best to restrain, but more often than not, they slip out before I think about it. But the ODG bingo thing would... my point of view, I would not like to see you sick because of it. Well, no, I definitely would never do anything that would harm my health, Hanzo, and I agree 100%. Yeah, I definitely am very cautious, being very looking at stuff to make sure that whatever I'm doing isn't going to be a physical harm. Like the Death Nut Challenge hurts, it sucks. People do it all the time. You know what I mean? It's not really going to kill me or anything. It'll make me uncomfortable for a little while, but it's okay. I don't mind that. Again, I'm doing it for good causes. It's totally worth it. The Vegemite thing is just disgusting. Like, it's not going to harm me physically in any way. It's just like you eating the thing you hate the most for 8 hours straight. So, it's me sitting here with a loaf of bread and a box of crackers and a jar of Vegemite. I'm going to get a small one. And I figure like a regular jar has got to be like that size, right? I'm getting a tub, but I got to be able to find it somewhere in this state. Chip it in on Amazon. I bet I can get it on Amazon. Let me take a second. I'll take a glance while we're chatting here. See if I can find it on Amazon. Amazon. Veg. Why did vegan pop up? Disgusting. All right, let's see. Vegemite. $20 for 250 grams. That is. Looks like they come in 2-packs. Ugh, why would I want 2? Oh God, there's a tub of it. 2.09 pounds of Vegemite. I'm not doing that one. Not doing that one. But $20. Oh, they make a squeezy tube. A squeezy tube the size of like a small mustard tube. Like, it looks like it's about that big. Squeezy would be convenient. So maybe that. The bingo cards are epic. Well, I'm glad you like them. I'm going to have to come up with some new stuff. Hot when it goes in is also hot when it goes out. I am aware of that, Hanzo, and that's why the term shit fire. Shit fire! Yeah, that's right. But yeah, so we are still working on the charity stuff. But I digress. I know some of you are here. But I don't have a whole lot of stuff to talk about today. I covered... Damn, mosquitoes. I have mosquito problems. I'm kind of chatting and hang out. Today's going to be a shorter episode than normal because I don't have a lot, but I did want to come in here. Feel bad that had to cancel so many of the D&D streams. So, like I said, I've got a couple ideas for some potentially new D&D content that I'm thinking of starting in place of Behind the Dice. And I'm sure that Behind the Dice will come back for episodes now and again. Folks do give me some great questions or ask me to talk about specific. So it'd be awesome to be able to pop back in and do one now and again. But now that I've been doing it, 16 episodes? Like 8 months. Plus I've missed a few in there. 8 to 10 months at this point. I've been talking about D&D for a while. I think you've all heard everything I have to say other than the stories themselves. Let's see. So, as a reminder, there's no streams tomorrow night. I don't stream on Friday. Saturday night is over on Twitch with Colonel Gaming. We're doing some Minecraft. Sunday night and Monday night, I'm back over here doing more Minecraft in... Can't think of the pack. It starts with an E. Enigmatic. Haha. Enigmatic 2. Very likely, I've been streaming a lot of Conan lately. Not that I don't want to stream Conan. I'm still going to be playing the bejeebus out of some Conan Exiles. But coming up in a week or so, I'm probably going to switch over and be streaming something different for at least a couple of weeks. Because it was announced yesterday that the final content for the game Raft comes out on the 20th or 21st. And I've streamed Raft a couple times. The most recent one was just a month or two ago. Maybe 2 or 3 months ago. And my game is at the point where I'm ready to continue with the story. So I'm not planning on starting over again. I assume I'm going to jump in and play through the end content. So I'm excited to see what that is. That's the current goal. Although I may start over again completely and run through it from beginning to end. But a little bit different than I normally do. I don't want to say anything because I'm not sure yet. But I'm definitely going to be streaming Raft when it comes out. Just like when Subnautica 2 came out, I immediately jumped on it. When Carcosa released the remake of Sky Factory 1, I immediately dropped everything and did that. There are games out there that I just love. And when there's new content in them, I want to get into it as quickly as I can. The Raft is coming up. And I'll still be playing a lot of Conan, but I may not be streaming it as much. I'm sure you'll still see it weekly. But I may be streaming a little bit more of Raft until I get it done. And then back to... So, just to kind of, I guess, finish up the Behind the Dice series. We've talked about a lot of different things, from magic items, character creation, NPC creation, storylines. World building is something we've touched on a lot. Given my suggestions and recommendations, the importance of creating a strong and effective pantheon of gods if you plan on having clerics and religion in your world. I think that's one of the first places to always start. Because knowing what gods do what and knowing the rules of your planet will enable you to create your stories. I wanted to touch on that. This is the one last thing I did want to touch on that I saved. And that is the rules. There are no rules in Dungeons & Dragons. They're guidelines. They're suggestions. Everything in every player's handbook or Dungeon Master Guide is designed to be ways you can play. It's quick reference if you want to do it the official way. It gives you everything you need to do that. Gives you the freedom to change and alter and come up with your own stuff whenever you want. My world, Mergedworlds, is very homebrewed, and it's based on 2nd edition Dungeons & Dragons. Majority of almost everything, races and classes, down to stats and how combat works, have all been changed at least a little bit by my own homebrew stuff. When you're creating your world, creating your gods, whatever your case is going to be, I recommend figuring out the rules of your world. These are important rules that make your world what it is. And these aren't rules for your characters, players. These are rules for you as a DM. Okay. If you're wanting to do storylines and such, where I touched on a couple things, or like prophecy. If you're going to have prophecy, rules of how those work and how those don't. If you're going to have step into clerical magic, right? If specific clerics can only cast specific types of spells, what are those? What's the rules behind those? How do you get magic from your god? These building blocks are what your world's going to be based on. And while you need to be open and free to changing the story and making things up as you go along, a good DM has to be able to improv. Those basic rules, that basic experience, the more consistent you make that, the better off you're going to be and your players for enjoying it. And I say that just from my own experience. If they can come in and they know, okay, these are things I can do, these are things I can't do. Cool, let's play the game. Let's argue. It's like this is how how magic works. This is how casting spells works. You know, that's not to say that down the road a rule can't change. You can be like, okay, listen, we've been playing for 6 months, and this one thing we're doing is just not working. None of us are having fun with it. What can we do to make it better? Okay, we're going to all move to that from now on. That's the new normal. That's how things are going to work from now on. Involve your players. Make sure that, you know, if things have to stay true to the story and the vision you have, make sure that they have a say in that. Let them, whatever you end up deciding doing, get their points of view on things. What are they having fun with? What are they not having fun with? You know? Don't be afraid to say, hey, what did you like about this adventure and what did you hate? And you've got to be okay with that. You've got to be able to take that feedback, because if you're not able to be open and take that criticism, like, hey, this had way too many puzzles and it was boring. I've got that feedback several times. It's something I struggle with. I like puzzles. I come up with the puzzles. Sometimes they love the puzzles, and sometimes puzzles that I think are easy, they get stuck on for an hour to the point of frustration. And so making that too much combat goes the same way. They want story. They want to develop their characters. They want to interact with people. They want to be able to walk into a city and talk to all the different store owners and the mayor and find out what's going on. They love that being their character and getting to act out their character, interacting with me as whatever NPC it is at the moment. So making sure I had plenty of those things they enjoyed, but still sliding in things that I needed them to have, like the occasional puzzle. I just had to be careful to either I had to make it easy, or I had to have a backup way for them to get the answer easy if they look like they're struggling. Or I have to give multiple ways to solve it, so there's a better chance they'll come up with it. My early puzzles were a lot harder than the puzzles I did in the last 5 to 10 years. I didn't have much problem with, but very early stuff I did was challenging for some of them. Sorry, I'm having flashbacks. But yeah, so having those basic rules to your world, right? A very common one in D&D is that only lawful good characters can be paladins. Right? That's a classic one. Can't remember if it's still that way in 5th edition. Only lawful good characters can be paladins, and I didn't like that. I think that paladin, which is basically a holy knight, right? Why can't any god have a holy knight? Especially since in the majority of a Dungeons and Dragons settings, the gods are usually on an equal balance, right? The gods are almost all the same strength. Sometimes there's a battle between the gods. Or in Mergedworlds, the 3 primary gods of good, neutral, and evil, which is Manara is the goddess of light, and then there's on the god of darkness, god of neutrality. Then the other gods were always just a slight bit weaker than the primary 3. Why is it that a lawful good goddess of light can have a paladin? Why can't there be a dark paladin with the same set of rules but twisted to the dark side if that god is just as powerful as this one? I mean, why would you not think that this god would see the benefit of a dark paladin? I would. If I was a dark god, hell yeah. If I was any god, I'd have a paladin. All right, you guys are so devoted to me, my message and what I'm trying to accomplish. I'm going to give you extra stuff because I know the power I'm putting in your hands is going to be used for furthering my goals. Better than even the average cleric. I know you are so devoted. Give you these abilities, and I'm going to set you out there and say, make my will happen. So in Mergedworlds, any god can have a paladin. Although, there are several gods who choose not to have paladins. That doesn't mean that one day it can't happen. And that in itself could be a huge storyline for someone, right? What if someone was a level 13 or 14 warrior, but worshipped a god of greed or chance, something that doesn't really normally have a paladin, and then suddenly they find out they've been chosen to be the first one. Their kid is. Or maybe one of their NPCs that they've taken on is one, or is the first one, or chosen to be one. That gives you a bunch of different options and ways to go with that, right? Oh, wow. The young boy that we just saved in that village, why are he being chased by these evil people? The kid legit doesn't know. It's because this kid's been chosen to be the first paladin, and his enemies know this, right? And he's the first bard paladin. Paladin who's been given, or a paladin's been given paladin powers by the goddess of song, beauty, and art to protect art and artists. Like, imagine what a paladin of bards would be like, right? You can imagine that this person would have some type of musical ability, right? Singing or something with like a horrendous inspire, right? The act of being a muse. Imagine if that paladin had the ability to literally inspire people just through presence. Instead of detect evil or detect good, detect talent. I'm a paladin, and I can be walking through a city and stop, see this poor young kid kicking a can down the street, and that kid has the capability of being an amazing artist. What is this kid's story? What's their situation? And how can I get them on that path? For good or ill, right? Because who knows what's going to become of it. Detect talent. What a great ability. I just thought of that. I'm totally going to steal that from Onlydraven. detect talent for the paladin god. Have you tried to contact Wizards of the Coast? They said with D&D that would be interested in your world. I don't know if my stuff would translate over as well, because my stuff's so second edition. You know what I mean? The world is so based on a second edition play style. I'm not sure if people would find it interesting. I mean, if they would find it something bankable, that being said, working with them and the people who know more about 5th, I'm sure they could help me convert it into a 5th format. I've often thought about putting it out as my own. Creating my own player's handbook for Mergedworlds, my own dungeon master guide, and releasing them as like Kickstarter things, or releasing them for sale, digital or physical download on my website. Creating my own D&D adventures, but that are played from a generic point of view. I always thought I could write really cool adventures without any D&D technical stuff in them. I can do puzzles, I can do clues, I can write the types of monsters and creatures, but the specs, how strong the things are, what are their hit points, how do you attack them, I could leave that up to the DM. Which means you're not going to be playing Dungeons & Dragons, you could be playing some old Palladium, any of the Palladium. Palladium is another that made a lot of really a Pathfinder. You can play it in Pathfinder. You know what I mean? You can play it in 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th version, whichever you want, because the specs, the numbers side of it is taken out. You get to put that in yourself. But the story, the adventure, the maps, the magic items, all that kind of stuff is provided for you. Just like buying a regular pre-written adventure, but that's written for you to be able to put into whatever game style you want. I've also thought about making Mergedworlds card games and Mergedworlds board games. For a card game concept, I thought that it would come with let me rephrase this. It would come with 5 decks. Right? There'd be like 5 decks. And there'd be a deck for the main 4 characters. Darsh, Dandy, Mercy, and Artemis. and then it would come with a villains deck. And the villains deck in cards, nobody plays them specifically. It's meant to be a 4-player game where you're teaming up to fight the neutral monster of the game. And you could buy additional decks to play in place, right? So it's not intended where you go and buy packs of cards. It really wasn't designed that, but it's like, okay, now I'm going to buy the Wraith Firemoon deck. Obviously, that'd be super easy to do. And in the deck, there'd be things like magic items, artifacts, ally cards that could be played from the NPCs of that character, right? Dandy would have, obviously, Michael would be one of the NPCs. And then you look at Artemis, Lucas, of course. Draven would be an NPC. I would not make a Draven deck. It's too powerful. But he could be an NPC. There'd be NPC cards that you could play who join you on the battle against whatever the bad guy is. But the bad guy would have people as well. Like every round you flip the top card off the deck. You know, or maybe certain situations would cause the bad guy deck to pull things off. It's like, okay, I'm going to attack. I flip it over. Oh, an NPC joins their side. You know? I've seen games like that, kind of along those lines, with like superheroes, where it could be different villains that they're fighting against, and it's everybody against the villain. So I thought something like that could be a fun game, and that's not to say I couldn't do expansions, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do expansion set. So magic item set. But if your deck always has to be, say, 60 cards, right? You've got to win in 60 cards. Like there's a limit to how long the game can last. If you take a card, a general magic item card, to be taken out of your deck and replaced with one from a dex pack, magic item pack, artifact, or an allies pack. Mercy's deck would have a lot of NPCs, but may have less special abilities. Where you have someone like Dandy who has a couple NPCs, but has more special abilities. Especially if you've watched any of the more recent Mergedworlds and you've learned about the new addition to Dandy's life. Darsh obviously has Jorn and Kerrig and all the, Nathalion, all the people that have been on his ship, right? So, I mean, you could imagine if the map of the world was the Southern Kingdoms, right? And it's almost you're trying to defeat a villain who's attacking or whatever. And it's like Darsh could play a card that allows the characters to move extra because he's using his ship to transport people. It could be something that you'd only find in his deck. But you could put the Fire Moon in there, easy. You could have Tobias could have a deck, Keeper of Time. Anyways, something like that. You could even have a general deck of cards that comes with it that's neutral, that anybody could pull a card off to play. And that's like neutral party members that are like Tobias, for example. Tobias steps in and helps, or steps in and hurts, right? Or the King of Darkmoor. Darkmoor's angry you stole his magic artifact. Lose a magic item. Or the King of Darkmoor agrees to help you. Gain an extra action this turn because he's helping you use time to do that. Or Tobias could even do that. There could be different options there. But it's a card game idea that I've been working on for a while, and I've drawn out some of the ideas for the cards. I bought some software on Steam that lets me create cards, specialty cards and such, and I've fiddled with it some, trying to work out the mechanics. But that's something I'd be interested to hear if anybody would be interested in playing. If it could be made for 2 to 4 players, maybe, so 2 people could still sit down and fight against the villain. Maybe the villain, I could try to, depending on the amount of players, may dictate the amount of actions that the villain gets every turn, right? For every person playing, you flip that many cards off of the villain deck each turn. They affect the party somehow or another. So the more people you play, the stronger the villain is. So it could open up some options. But anyways, it's an idea anyway. Lots. There's so many different NPCs, and magic items, and places, Mergedworlds, that I think I have more than enough lore to pull from to supply enough cards for multiple. But it was something. So I would say, how does that sound as a game? Versus a more traditional style game. like a Magic the Gathering style, where you buy packs of cards and maybe you choose your primary hero, which could be Artemis or Darsh or Wraith Firemoon, and you build your deck out of cards for that person, right? Maybe there are cards that are specific classes. This is a fighter card. This is a mage card. Obviously, Mercy's not going to whip out the mage card. There's magic items that exist. You can put that in your deck. I pull out the chest of holding. I now can hold 3 extra cards per turn or something like that. Where then people could, buy expansion packs and use those to build their own deck. And either one of them I could see the pros and cons of. I just don't know if there's enough interest to go through all that of putting something like that together. But I think it'd be kind of cool to at least be able to, I could sell them on my website, right? Speaking of my website, the pricing structure and everything of the merch on my website will be changing over the next week. Things will very likely be dropping in price. And some changes to the drop shipper that I use, process that they charge me with taxes and such, that is going to enable me to be able to offer some stuff at a bit lower prices. So expect sometime over the next week or two, at least by the end of the month, the website will change a little bit on the store side of it. There may be some additional things on there. Also, I showed last episode of Behind the Dice, I showed you guys some of the rough sketches that our channel artist Shadowcast is doing to create the holy symbols. And we've sent me examples of pretty much all of them at this point. And it's going to take her a while to get these drawn out. Draw them all quality enough that I can put them on merchandise. But she's drawing them in a way that I can use them for merch as well as use them on channels and streams and things. So it's like 3 or 4 different formats per drawing that she provides me every time she does a drawing. So for like the 30 drawings she's doing, it's going to take a while. So I don't know when that's coming, but it'll probably be a while. I'm totally cool with that. She always does such good work. But yeah, like I said, I know we've only been going for about an hour today, but to be honest, that's pretty much everything I wanted to chat about today. Unless anybody has any last minute questions about Mergedworlds or Dungeons & Dragons or anything, I'll probably look to end out the stream here. Again, reminder, as of right now, next Thursday, there will not be a stream. Dental surgery. I will be sore and high, and I will not be able to talk. But the week after that, we're just pushing Mergedworlds off 1 week. Instead of Mergedworlds next week, it'll be the week after. On the off chance they can get me into surgery earlier, that might change. Mergedworlds may still be next Thursday. I am on their on-call list in case they have a cancel. It would be awesome. I am not in comfort. Not in comfort at all. Yeah. Well, I think that's about it. Again, I know it was a short one today, but I appreciate you guys, especially folks who've been coming back to so many of these and hanging out and asking great questions and such. I know that a lot of you folks who come to this are also fans of Mergedworlds, so I definitely appreciate that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Mergedworlds and the direction that it's going. Haven't had a chance to talk to a lot of people lately that are listeners, so if you have some feedback on the current stories, do you like where it's going, or is it confusing? If it feels like it's just as good or not as good as the older story, I'd love to get some details and thoughts on what you guys think of the current Mergedworld storyline. Right now, I am doing material that I'm writing as we're telling it. I mean, writing it ahead of time, but it's not pre-played stuff. So I'm just wondering how well that's going over and maintaining versus the stuff that's already been played. But thank you very much. I appreciate it, Ashley. All right, Hanso, we'll catch you later. You folks have yourselves a wonderful night. Get out there and play some D&D if you have the opportunity to do so. Last minute thing with my wife, I took her to get something to eat at Jersey Mike's today before the stream. And they had a flyer, the board up where you put flyers up. And they had one up for looking for D&D players. Like once a week, take a number. They're playing at a little shop here in town. I thought that was really cool. It's been so long since I'd seen somebody advertise like that. I may have to start doing some more DMing things myself. All right, guys. You folks have yourselves a wonderful day, wonderful night. Have a great weekend. Party hard, but party safe. And hopefully I will see you again. Okay? Thanks for listening to me.